many signal events in Mormon history, such as Joseph's first vision of God, his purported discovery of the Book of Mormon, and the saints' grueling trek to Utah. But most historians have ignored Joseph's death, known to the faithful as the martyrdom. The Church's sacred record of doctrine and covenants, chapter 135, verses 1 through 6, reports Joseph was killed by an armed mob, painted black, of from 150 to 200 persons, a phrase that appears in almost every high school history textbook in America. But the mob included a prominent newspaper editor, a state senator, a justice of the peace, 2 regimental military commanders, and men who just a few months before were faithful members of Joseph's church. They were a respectable set of men, as one Carthage resident explained. The leading citizens of southwestern Illinois could have imprisoned Joseph Smith. They could have chased him back across the Mississippi and delivered him to his old enemies in Missouri. Instead, they killed him. Why? That is the story of this book. Joseph Smith's death was supposed to seal the fate of Mormonism, according to the New York Herald, which reported that the Latter-day Saints have seen the latter day. Quite the contrary. Joseph's death ended only the first chapter in the long chronicle of one of America's most ambitious and successful religions. Never forgetting their prophet dear, several thousand Mormons braved the 1,300-mile overland journey to the Utah Territory. There they founded an independent republic the size of France, lived in open rebellion against the federal government for the better part of a half-century, and only gradually realigned themselves with the country they held responsible for the death of their leader. The assassination of Joseph Smith marked the beginning of the triumphal Mormon progress that continues to this day. Joseph's death did not paralyze the Mormons. Instead, it galvanized the saints, strengthened them in their beliefs, and propelled them westward to a new, final, thriving Zion. The blood of the martyrs was indeed the seed of the Church, as Joseph's nephew, Church President Joseph Fielding Smith, gruesomely observed in the Juvenile Instructor, a Mormon children's magazine. The saints, perhaps the most work-addicted culture in American history, according to historian David Bryan Davis, labored, they proselytized, they fought, prayed, and struggled to erect an international Christian movement with 14 million members. That imposing edifice stands atop the modest gravestone of a 38-year-old preacher gunned down in cold blood on America's Mississippi border. 1. Flight. Nauvoo, Illinois, June 23, 1844. Just after midnight, 4 men cast a shallow-bottomed skiff into the roiled waters of the raging Mississippi. It had been raining for weeks. No one could remember the river this swollen or this angry. In St. Louis, 200 miles to the south, steamboats were boarding passengers from the second stories of flooded warehouses on Water Street. Mississippi River very high, Joseph Smith wrote in his diary on April 25th. Higher than known by the oldest inhabitants about. Up and down the shoreline, grist mills for grinding flour had washed away. In some areas there wasn't enough to eat. In Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri, bottomland farmhouses washed into the swell, tangling their beams, joists, and window casements with uprooted trees. Flotsam smashed against the sides of the skiff, sloshing water over the gunwales. The 4 Mormons from Illinois were rowing to the tiny town of Montrose, a mile and a half across the river in the Iowa Territory. The U.S. Army, homesteaders, and finally some Mormon settlers had staked out Montrose, which sat on the edge of a vast tract of real estate known as the half-breed lands. 2 of the passengers, Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram,